In the past, I've made videos about pitchers who had low win amounts in a single season despite pitching well due to a combination of poor run support and bad team bullpens. This, however, works the other way as well. A pitcher could have a disastrous season and still find himself with more wins than losses should he get ample run support and a solid bullpen to back him. Given the correct circumstances, a bad pitcher could even end up undefeated. It would require everything to go right, with no faults in the runs scored by the hitters and runs allowed by the relievers. The chances of a terrible pitcher getting a significant amount of wins and staying undefeated is near impossible. But that's exactly what we saw from a pitcher in 1999. The pitcher in question is Jason Bere. A bit of background on Bere. He pitched in 11 seasons from 1993 to 2003, mostly with the White Sox, but bounced around multiple teams near the end of his career. You may remember Bere as the losing pitcher in the 1994 All-Star Game. The man who gave up the winning double to Moises Alou that drove in Tony Gwynn, one of the most memorable All-Star games in MLB history. Bere was a star right from the beginning. In his rookie season in 1993, he went 12-5 with a 3.47 ERA and 122 adjusted ERA. He pitched 142 and 2/3 innings and struck out 122 batters. For his accomplishments, he finished second in Rookie of the Year voting that season. In 1994, we saw more of the same. He had near identical statistics, posting similar stats everywhere. 1994 would be the last time Bere posted a good season. He experienced tendonitis in 1995 and posted an ERA over 7 while leading the league in losses. Other injuries slowed him down for the rest of his career, and he was never the same pitcher he was once the injuries started. Prior to 1995, Bere had a 122 adjusted ERA over almost 300 innings and achieved 5.4 WAR. After 94, Bere had a 78 adjusted ERA across 800 innings and negative 2.5 WAR. Really goes to show how detrimental injuries can be for pitchers. Anyway, we're here to talk about Bere's 1999 season, or as I like to call it, the luckiest season a pitcher has ever had. In 1999, Bere split time between the Cincinnati Reds and Milwaukee Brewers. He pitched in 17 games and started 14 of them. He finished the season with a 6.08 ERA, 77 adjusted ERA, and a 1.935 WHIP. Among 258 pitchers in 1999 to throw at least 66 innings, Bere ranks 256th in WHIP and 235th in adjusted ERA. Not a good season that year for him. Despite the lackluster season, Bere finished the year with a record of 5-0. He did not lose a single game. How did he do it? Well, to put it simply, he had a ton of run support and was a streaky pitcher. In his 5 wins, Bere has an ERA of 2.57, allowing 8 runs over 28 innings. In all the other games he pitched in, Bere has an ERA of 8.61, nearly averaging a full run allowed per inning pitched. Despite that terrible ERA, Bere didn't earn a single loss and his teams went 12-5 in games he pitched in. In those 5 team losses that Bere pitched in, his team averaged over 5 runs per game. The hitters provided a ton of run support and it was the bullpen that would blow the game. In fact, in all 17 games Bere pitched in, his team scored a total of 117 runs. That's nearly 7 per game. Bere may have allowed a ton of runs to score, but the Reds and Brewers would score a ton of runs too. To put in perspective how much of an anomaly this season is, let's compare it to other pitching seasons in the past. Among all starting pitchers in the history of MLB, Bere's 1999 season is the record for most games started by a pitcher to go undefeated and have an adjusted ERA below 100. In fact, there are only 28 instances in baseball history of a pitcher starting at least 5 games while recording an adjusted ERA under 100 and going undefeated. Bere is in the bottom 10 of that group in adjusted ERA, but there's more to it. Many pitchers on this list only have 1 or 2 wins. Bere's 5 wins are the 3rd most among pitchers on this list, and I'd like to also mention the only two pitchers with more wins didn't have terrible seasons. They weren't good, but they weren't downright awful. Bere's season was downright awful. It gets worse though. Bere's whip in 1999 was 1.935. That is extremely high even for the steroid era. For those unaware, whip stands for walks and hits per innings pitched. It's a statistic that shows the average number of walks and hits combined a pitcher allows per inning. It's the standard stat used for pitchers to judge how many base runners they allow. An average whip typically will be 1.30. Anything below 1 is elite, and anything above 1.6 is really bad. Here's a chart featured on Fangraphs that ranks whip. In 1999, the league-wide average whip was 1.463. That makes sense, as 1999 was in the middle of the steroid era, a period where hitting excelled and pitching was subpar. As mentioned earlier, out of over 250 pitchers to throw as many innings as Bere did, only 2 pitchers had a worse whip than Bere. Ever since that 1999 season, only 6 pitchers have posted a whip worse than Bere's. I mentioned this to show just how terrible Bere's whip was. Despite that, Jason Bere still went undefeated. In the history of MLB, going back to 1871, there is only one other instance of a pitcher starting at least 5 games in a season to record a whip of at least 1.9 and go undefeated. The only other instance of this criteria happening was done in 1943 by Eugene Jones of the Homestead Grays in the Negro National League. He started 5 games, went 2-0, and recorded a whip of 2.070. Bere had more than double the amount of wins as Jones did. The next highest whip amongst all starting pitchers to start and win at least 5 games and go undefeated is 1.509. Bere is the only starting pitcher in the history of baseball to start and win at least 5 games and record a whip of at least 1.510. Reminder that his whip was 1.935. He outpaces the second place pitcher by a large margin. And there's still more to say. In the history of baseball, there have been 31 instances of a starting pitcher having at least 5 wins in a season and going undefeated. Bere is one of 2 pitchers on that list to have an adjusted ERA below 100, and naturally, he is dead last. Many of the pitchers on this list had limited playing time. Most, in fact, started fewer than 10 games. If we limit the criteria to pitchers to win at least 5 games, lose 0, and start at least 10 games in a season, it's happened 14 times. Bere is on that list, and he has the lowest adjusted ERA of any pitcher there, the only one to be below average. His terrible season was so lucky he's in a league of his own. Everything that had to go right did go right. From a win-loss perspective, it's the luckiest season in the history of Major League Baseball.